Hello and welcome to the table, Baldurs Gate DND, and yes, Warhammer friends from both the fantasy and Total War communities. Have a seat, grab your favorite drink, and settle in for a unique modded character build and modded class, the Surgeon. And not just any surgeon, but we will be building a plague surgeon of Nurgle to spread the gifts of filth and disease. This episode will be going through all 12 levels of the Surgeon, specifically the subclass called the Injector. Huge credits to the mod author, Gentleman Babu, for putting the time and effort to create this mod and also putting in the features and spells. Now, to quote the mod author on the description of the class, live out your dreams of being a totally quote-unquote ethical, in no way deranged medical professional of Faerun. Choose your subclass to determine your implement and determine the fate of the world through the masterpiece that is your treatment plan. Engage in the combination of systems of Cannibal or the infectious devastation of Injector. Now, the specific description of the Injector. Sometimes death is the only way out. You know this, but sometimes your patients don't. That's why they pay you the big bucks. You soothe the weary and lull them to sleep forever. Utilize your syringe, which is packed with subclass specific cantrips and a small heal, to induce your patients. Once they have felt the sting of suffering, remove their misery with a power spike of the needle into their flesh, inflicting your choice of acid or poison damage. Lethal injections are your trade, and you are high in demand. Some miscellaneous notes from the mod author are the class is coded to have a primary stat of Dex, with its spellcasting stat being Intelligence. Spoiler alert for the build, we'll go more in depth about this, but we are going to be dumping a lot of points into Intelligence. The class is tagged as a cleric for dialogue purposes. The subclass Injector is a half-caster, and also, major important note, this class has only been coded up to go to level 12. They will patch dummy levels at a later date. Don't intend to extend the class to level 20 for now, to multi-class out of Surgeon once you reach your 12th level. And also, I will admit, I am doing 12 levels of this subclass alone, just because if we were to do 20 levels, ideally I would like to do that just to see how insane this could get, but also it would bloat the video out of control. Now, for those new to the channel, one of my main focuses for videos is creating unique Baldurs Gate 3 characters, utilizing mods both for enhancement and roleplay, giving you different types of replayability. And if that's something you're really into, I would personally love to hear your favorite character builds in the comments below, and also going into in-depth discussions with all of you on what characters you would specifically build this class around, some multi-class synergies that you could see this with, or different completely out of left field build requests. Also, side note, I do have videos of narrative-driven Total War Warhammer campaigns of modded and non-modded factions to show and tell unique stories of those individual leaders. I will admit, the modded factions have been insanely fun to play, and who knows, I might even start some Nurgle campaigns of modded factions. And if you love talking shop about character builds or epic story-driven war campaigns, consider hitting the like, subscribe, and bell icon notifications for more of those unique adventures. And also for new viewers who stumbled upon this video, the way I want to structure this character build is going through starting levels, with specific choices in race and other beginning features, levels 2 through 12, wrapping up with specific gear and equipment to complement the build in terms of roleplay or improving stats or spells. Now, when it comes to character builds, I do mainly stick with choices, abilities, and spells, and equipment that also suit the characters thematically, or try to keep in line with what the mod author intended. Now, I may slip into choices that might be super roleplay or also just metagaming the hell out of this game, but also I am aware in the Baldurs Gate and DND communities there's different camps of people with the role players or the min-maxing damage output. Just whatever camp you fall into, just have fun with the build. That's what matters in the end. But I have a good feeling that both the role players and also the damage min-maxers will really like this class. It's a pretty unique theming too. And yes, I know some of my regular viewers have heard this spiel before, but this is my personal way of saying thank you to the mod author for creating this by going through 12 levels only as the class, just trying my best to showcase everything there is to offer and to, well, like the min-maxers out there say, to just give the full potential that there is. Also, of course, as an added thank you, I'm going to leave the link to the mod in the pinned comment below for all of you to download yourselves and to mess around with too. I'm already thinking about different types of multi-classing that we can do with this. Just imagine the Circle of Spores Druid combined with this too. Now, before we get into specific details of the character build, it's only right that we go over just a quick lore overview of the specific character we're drawing inspiration from for those more interested about the Plague Priests of Nurgle and specifically Festus the Leech Lord. I'm going to try to keep this short so I don't bloat the video with too much lore information, but also Warhammer friends, do let me know in the comments if I missed out on important information. I'm personally a huge fan about talking about the lore and backstory of different Warhammer characters, so please bombard me with all the information you got on Festus or anything that would be relevant to the creation of this build or theming around it. Now, to quote the Warhammer wiki, Dr. Festus was once a skilled imperial surgeon who founded hospices all over the Elector province of Nordland, which is the north of the empire, and was a compassionate soul as he was gifted. He specialized in curative augments, salves, and the good doctor cured hundreds of people every year. With Festus's guidance, Nordland overcame outbreaks of the Screaming Plague, Blackleg disease, and even the crippling ghoul pox. However, when faced with one of the most incurable diseases known to mankind, the good doctor gave his life and soul over to Nurgle to find a cure, and find a cure he did, but also madness as well, with the overwhelming knowledge of all other diseases and cures in the known world and beyond. So with this build, we will have that versatility of Grandpapa Nurgle to both heal allies but also devastate enemies with our injections and medicine. Now, without further ado, let's get into the first level of the build. Alright friends, I know it sounds very Billy Basic to be using only a human for this class, but hear me out. We are using a variant human mod to enhance this class as much as possible, and the variant human mod provides different race passives for us to choose from, and there's a huge amount to really just build this character around. And yes, it does seem a little bit metagamey for some of my choices, but one of my choices is Resilient, which grants us a +1 to intelligence, which I did say earlier is our main casting modifier. When we get to the ability output modifier, this will be a huge game changer for the early game. And for one of the other passives, I personally like picking up Fast Hands, gain an additional bonus action, and also with one of the other mods, this allows us to essentially take our two bonus actions and combine it into a regular action. And my regular viewers also know that I preach about action economy. Being able to have another action or potentially another attack in the early game stages is a massive, huge meta game changer for you as the player, and also allows you to really just up your damage output. And also, speaking of damage output, since some of our main damage output will be from our cantrips, which we will be gaining from the syringe, potent cantrips become harder to evade entirely, and when a creature does succeed saving throws against your cantrips, it does still take at least half of the cantrip's damage but suffers no additional effects. So essentially this is kind of like not get out of jail free card, but essentially like, hey, you'll at least get some damage when it comes to casting spells on your enemies. Now, for the specific cantrip at starting level, I personally like picking up Tendon Clip for that damage output, and also for thematic purposes too, dealing 1 to 8 piercing damage. No one asks why you have a stretch muscle for a whip. No one should. Wrap the stringy flesh on the creature's leg and yank. knocking the creature prone. So knocking them prone and also leaving them vulnerable for attacks from you or your party members, that's also going to really help in terms of actually getting rid of enemies quicker. As for the background, for roleplay purposes, I picked up Sage. You are, quote-unquote, a good doctor that was enlightened by Nurgle himself. So you get skills of Arcana, which is a massive +6 thanks to our race passive, and also another +6 to history. All also thanks to intelligence, which instead of only just being 17 is a now even 18, which in turn gives us a +4, which is insanely high at the starting game level. Constitution and Dexterity will be at respectable 14s, overall +2 for each of them. Dex is also the main attack modifier for this class. Wisdom at a respectable +12 for that will save, or 12 meaning a +1 for will saves. Charisma at 10, so no negatives, no pluses either. Strength, we are going to be taking points away from, but it is very much worth it for this specific build that we're going for. As for our skill proficiencies, like I said, Arcana and History +6, Investigation +6, Medicine 2 +3, Perception +3, and Persuasion at a decent +2. At level 2, we gain options of subclasses. For Injector, we gain a spell slot, which for thematic purposes, we're going to pick up Ray of Sickness, dealing 2 to 16 poison damage, and also possibly poisoning the target over a period of 2 turns, suffering disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks. We also gain the subclass feature of Dueling, wielding a melee weapon that's not two-handed or versatile, and no weapon in the other hand. We deal 2 additional damage with that weapon, which is our syringe. We also gain 2 actions here. Lethal Injection, dealing a 2d8 poison damage, induce your patient with a dose of poisonous substances, inflict damage and poison the target. On a miss, does not expend a spell slot. And also the other action of Summon Tools, Euthanasia. You have determined the best course of action is to inject your opponents with alchemical substances. At level 3, we gain another spell slot, which for roleplay purposes and also for crowd control metagame purposes, I like picking up Grease. Grease is just overall a solid spell to use in the early game to knock your enemies prone. We also gain the subclass feature of Don't Touch Me, I'm Sterile. It's probably not true, but don't let them tell you that. Gain temporary hit points equal to your surgeon level and intelligence modifier upon reaching a target's health to 0. So intelligence modifier is going to be a +4 because of our 18, and also this is kind of like what the necromancers have when they're able to kill enemies. As for the feat, I would pick ability improvement and really put 2 points into intelligence, already giving us 20 intelligence, overall a +5 at the early game stage of level 4. We also gain the class feature of Bedside Manner, words drip like honey into the mouths of your patients, advantage on charisma, and advantage on deception and persuasion checks. At level 5, we gain the extra attack feature, plus also an action of Lethal Injection, acid weapon damage, 3d8 acid damage to be exact. Corrupt the veins of your patient with a dose of acidic fluids, inflict damage and induce acidosis on the target for 3 turns with noxious fumes, deals 1d4 poison damage per turn. Creatures must succeed a Constitution saving throw or take an additional 2d4 poison damage over time. On a successful save, the target still takes at least half damage, and on a miss, doesn't expend your spell slot. This is really powerful at level 5 too, and just being able to damage enemies over time. It is going to be a long patient game, but also with some of the gears that we have too, it'll up our poison damage by quite a bit. Ray of Enfeeblement is my spell choice here, weakening a foe, dealing half damage with weapon attacks using strength for a period of 10 turns. This is definitely something that Nurgle casters would use to essentially just decay their enemies over time. As for the cantrip choice here, you can really choose whichever one you want for roleplay and also for metagame purposes too. Prep work does only cost a bonus action. Prepare your mind for the surgery to commence. Attacks have advantage until the end of your turn. And yes, it may seem like a waste of a bonus action, but also because of the fact that it's only a bonus action that gets used up. Plus also we had a modifier that gave us an extra bonus action at level 1 that makes things a little bit better with this. For level 7, go ahead and choose whichever spell you want here. I personally like having silence in order to be an a caster that is an anti-caster as well, and essentially giving you magical superiority on the battlefield, making sure enemy casters can't counteract your poison damage. As for the feat here, I personally like picking up Meta Magic Adept, and yes, this is a modded feat from one of the modded feat packs that I'm using too. So for my choices here, this basically gives you different passives from the sorcery tree. I personally like picking up Twin Spell, allowing us to target an additional creature, only costing 1 sorcery point. You do get a total of 2 sorcery points with this. And also, I like picking up Extended Spell, double the duration of conditions, summons, and surfaces caused by spells. This is really leaning into how much we can extend the limit of our poison damage over time too. And also, just like Twin Spell, only cost is 1 sorcery point. At level 9, we gain the subclass feature of Chemical Cocktail, weapon damage of 2d8 acid and 2d8 poison. Very strong there, and with both types of weapon damage, we inject a swirling mixture of acids and venoms into our patient for 3 turns, dealing 1d4 poison damage per turn. Creatures must succeed a Constitution saving throw or an additional 2d4 poison damage. On a successful save, the target still takes half damage. On a miss, doesn't expend our spell slot. And also the additional spell I would personally pick up here to get into the filth of Nurgle is Stinking Cloud. Create a cloud of gas so nauseating it prevents creatures from taking actions for 10 turns. It's a pretty strong crowd control spell too, and while it doesn't necessarily do damage, like I said before with action economy, making enemies skip their turns will really benefit you and the rest of your group too. At level 10, we gain the class feature of Code Blue, increasing our movement speed by 3 meters. And also, the spell choice I would personally pick here is Glyph of Warding. Inscribe a circle of arcane glyphs on the ground. When stepped on by an enemy, the selected magical effect will trigger. This is essentially just a little trap card that you can play. At level 11, we gain the action of Terminal Rush, which is a weapon damage of 2d6 slashing, rushing our opponents with unyielding force and dealing damage plus maiming them with the blow. We also gain another spell slot, which I would personally pick up Hypnotic Pattern. Hypnotize creatures that can see the pattern, cannot attack you, and can't move or act. The spell can be cast even when we're silenced too, and it does last for 2 turns. This is also, yes, a good action economy spell to have, and essentially just skips enemies' turns. At level 20, you could potentially pick up Poisoner for thematic purposes, but also for me, I decided to go with Spell Sniper. Learning a cantrip and the number you need to roll a critical hit with spells is reduced by 1. One of the other things too is this will stack up with our gear and equipment too. And also I am using modded Eldritch Blast spells, so you can pick up acid or potential primal savagery, or you could even potentially pick up poison blast. It really is up to you. I'm leaning towards the poison blast one though. Now, when it comes to the specific gear and equipment, it's a mishmash of items that will buff our magic, but also provide some poison buffs as well. Starting with the headpiece, Hat of the Sharp Caster. When you roll a 1 or 2 on damage dice for a spell attack, the dice are re-rolled once. This is essentially saying that we will get at least the bare minimum, or maximize the bare minimum of our damage output with our spells. Now for the specific cloak, Derivation Cloak. Deadly Derivation. When you poison a foe, heal yourself for 1d4 hit points. This is really in line with Nurgle's playstyle of basically being self-containing and really tanking amount of damage. In fact, a lot of Nurgle worshippers are known for having high amounts of health and sustaining a lot of damage too. Poisoner's Robe. When the wearer casts a spell that deals poison damage, it deals an additional 1 to 4 poison damage, increasing the damage output and pairing well with the Hat of the Sharp Caster. Deadly Channeler Gloves will also pair well with these two, with Arcane Critical. Magically augment your ability to annihilate your foes with powerful attacks. Number you need to roll a critical hit while attacking is reduced by 2, so instead of 1, we really just cut down the challenge of actually landing that critical hit. This effect can stack, can only have temporary hit points from one source. And also for the boots, Gargoyle Boots with Gargoyle's Countenance. This is kind of like a tanking abjuration spell with a dex saving throw of +2 for us. Become stone, gaining resistance to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. As for your necklace and rings, the necklace will be Spellcrux Amulet, giving you the ability to restore a spell slot, which is going to pair really well with our surgeon-specific spells. Ring of Salving. You restore an additional 2 hit points every time you heal another creature. This is going to pair well with our melee weapon, or essentially our ability to not just poison our enemies, but also to actually heal and provide some self-sustain for our entire party. And the last piece, Ring of Regeneration. At the beginning of your turn, Ring activates and heals you 1 to 4 hit points. A very small amount, but also pairs well with the other pieces of equipment especially the Derivation Cloak too. Now for the actual melee weapon here, Artificial Leech has the ability of Hand Me My Leech, which does 3 to 24 piercing damage. Equips the surgeon with a bloated biting leech, allowing him to cast leech. Suckle a foe with hundreds of piercing teeth for 7 to 63 piercing damage, which is pretty high up there for what seems to be like a simple syringe too, making them bleed for 2 turns. And, well, I mean, Leech, Festus the Leech Lord, definitely playing in line with that legendary lord from Warhammer. Alright friends, that has been my 12 level showcase of the Injector subclass of the Surgeon. Let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with my leveling choices, equipment gear, or just overall concept of the character, whether if you would metagame or also change it so that my choices, or I should say your choices, are in line with the roleplay of a Nurgle worshipper. And also for the new and returning viewers, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video all the way through. If you made it this far, especially for the new viewers, I'd love to have you consider hitting the like, subscribe, and bell icon notifications for more unique showcases of modded characters. And also, we'll be doing future videos. I do have a lot planned in store for combining these modded classes together and really just either synergizing, or even if they don't synergize, just seeing what kinds of wild combinations we can create. And I hope to see you on those next adventures, friends. Take care and farewell.